This is the Taft homestead. I'm fifth generation on the homestead. My ancestors were Mormon pioneers that came down here and homesteaded this country in the 1880s. Presently we have sheep. We run about 1,500 head of sheep. You know, as my father was working this ranch and I was a young man and needed a way to provide for myself, I got into the logging business and in the late 70s and into the 80s, and conflict with the spotted owl that put me out of business. I had 32 employees and quite a robust business, and we had, I think there were 11 mills in this little valley. They really didn't know why those owls were losing population. They made the assumption it was because of logging, and they were wrong. And so with sage hen and other endangered species, I was concerned about and had a desire to make sure that the science was ahead of decisions being made. And so that was my motive to get involved in PARM.
Andy was one of the first people to see the value of the Parker Mountain Adaptive Resource Management Working Group, what we refer to as PARM. He is an example. He's an innovator. He's somebody out, he's on the tip of the spear, so to speak, when it comes to conservation.
Andy was one of the very first members in our local working group that was organized here in the mid-90s, and he's been a part of that working group ever since. He's done a great job as far as helping us with support from the local community in encouraging other ranchers and grazers to be involved with this process.
And on that first meeting, as the ranchers talked and USU Extension talked and the Division of Wildlife was here, Andy was the one who said, "Now wait a minute, why don't we mark the birds and let the birds tell us what's going on here on the mountain?" He was the first to express that locally.
With Andy Taft, it was my first face-to-face experience with somebody that I became aware of was very responsible on the landscape relative to land stewardship, making sure they're keeping a close eye on what the conditions are on the landscape and monitoring and adjusting the way that they're putting their animals out on the landscape to take all of that into consideration.
If we look at the local working group process, we have 11 different local working groups across the state of Utah. PARM is one of them. Until we get that local buy-in and local leadership, our groups don't progress. They don't survive. And it usually takes somebody who's innovative, willing to stick their neck out in their own community, willing to even take some heat for the decisions they're making. And that was Andy down here.
So the Parker Mountain and the adjoining mountains that I run on is my home. My livelihood and the livelihood of generations to come is depending on me being a good steward. And I'm passionate about doing the right thing out here.